Everyone, welcome to SDRescue. It is episode, I believe it's 48, episode 48 of SDRescue. Once again, joined by Grayson Fulbright, who is currently located in Vietnam, but soon will be relocating. Grayson, we're happy to have you back on the show.
Yeah, it's awesome to be able to join whenever I get the time. I will be traveling over the next few weeks, so may not be able to join some future episodes, but I will be in the Western Hemisphere, so closer to everyone's time zone, and hopefully that'll give me some opportunities to do some more events and maybe host some workshops to go over the sequences and kind of the emails that we've been reviewing. So to kind of cue us off, Austin, you've done the rewrite for today. This is a very interesting email that you picked out, and I wanted to just kind of get your thoughts on, why this email.
Because I think it does everything wrong all at once. There's a couple of things. We'll talk about I'll talk about it in context of the sequence, but the email, so the email has some massive formatting issues. And I do want to talk about that, especially as sales leaders and as people who are, or SDRs, as you're using automation tools, about why it's important to choose certain ways of doing things instead of just there's a really big numbering problem in this email, and we'll see why that causes a problem, and hopefully ways so that you don't have egg on your face in your prospect's inbox. That's one thing. The other thing is that it's a breakup email done in, I don't know, one of the strangest ways, where it's, normally there's some kind of like takeaway, but instead they put a breakup in the subject line, and then they still just do a Hail Mary throw up pitch in the body. And so I don't know. I want to talk about that and reinforce why we don't do breakup emails, why we don't like breakup emails, and why they probably aren't doing that much for you. So we'll touch on that as well. And I rewrite it in a way that adds value, or at least is a way to be a resource to your prospects, especially if they've gone dark on you for a while. So we'll talk about all of those things.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll let you focus on those. I've got my own things I want to emphasize, and particularly I want to really look into emotion, and more than emotion, what, like, figuring out messaging that can resonate with people in a way that actually motivates action or something. Maybe it's researching a brand, maybe it's just responding to say that they unsubscribe. I mean, if you're sending a goodbye email, I'm assuming this is, step 9, 10, 11, 12, etc. So just getting something from a prospect is better than nothing at this point. And so I'm going to let Austin kind of touch on kind of the fundamentals of what I think went wrong with just the breakup style email and the formatting. And I'm going to try to focus more so on what I believe should be included in more tail end emails that are going to be closer to the end of the sequence and are really, you don't have much ammo left because you've used it all throughout the sequence. And so what can you use and how can you position yourself to plant the seeds for a future deal?
Nice. All right. So here's the email. Goodbye from the salesperson. Hey, Austin, I messaged you a few times, but I understand that nobody likes being bombarded by cold emails. Smiley face. The truth is, I'm confident we can drive serious growth for. Here's a quick summary how. We're professionals in helping cybersecurity firms leverage inbound marketing for rapid growth. Our team includes passionate, kick-A marketers and sales enthusiasts. We've won awards, including the Growth 500 list 3 times. What do we do? 1. No, I'm just kidding. I won't read through it. Increase the volume of B2B leads. Increase the average value of deals that you close. Help reduce your cost of new sales and position you as an authoritative figure in the cybersecurity field. I'm 96% sure we can build value for you. I need the other 4% approval from you. Smiley face again. Do you have 10 minutes this week? Here's my calendar. HubSpot link. Okay. I'm going to zoom in because I'm at 100%, not 150. There we go.
Much better. All right. So I'm going to let you focus on the breakup piece, but the big driver I want to put here is from the beginning to the end, they're using speech, talking about themselves, and assumptions that they're making about themselves, and completely lacking what I foresee as the most important pieces of an email at this stage of sequence, which is going at those like future visions or future states you think that you can reach for a prospect, digging in really hard to specific pains or situations that might catch them off guard or catch their attention. I feel like we run into these emails a lot where we say that they're kind of talking to themselves. It's a combination of descriptions about you and your brand plus assumptions you make about what the prospects thinks that can just create an endless conversation that can last in 10 to 12 steps. And I think just removing a little bit of the blue, because assumptions are the worst. I think you can talk about yourself. It's okay to talk about your brand. That's sales. But when you mix in assumptions, like if you see throughout this email anywhere where there's blue close to an orange, that usually indicates that they're actually, instead of talking about their brand and just making a statement, it often is confused and misperceived as an assumption that they're making. So for instance, on bullet point or numbered bullet point number 7, they say increase the average value of deals that you close. So if I am a person reading this email and I read that section right there, I could have just read that, okay, what do we do? This brand increases the average value of deals for sales teams. It's a statement. They're talking about themselves, yeah, but there's nothing for me to compare or really like put to the test. It's like, okay, you're telling me that you do this, great. But the moment that you include an assumption that involves the prospect, it's all breaks. Everything breaks, because now the prospect's thinking, wait a minute, you increase the average value of our deals that I close? What if I don't close the deals? Or what if I generate deals, but someone else closes for me? Or what if we already have, good average value of deals, and I personally don't think that you can increase them, right? As soon as you place an assumption in what would have otherwise just been a basic statement about you or your brand, the moment you place an assumption, it becomes this big mind game for the prospect. Because now, instead of reading a sales email with a pitch, which is easy to ignore or gloss over, now you're making claims about them and their reputation or their expertise, their position at the business. And now all of a sudden, instead of thinking about it like a pitch, that they have a clear opportunity to challenge you. They have a clear opportunity to say, you said that, but that's not true. Spam, right? So I just wanted to kind of frame that first. I think like when you use assumptions with anything, whether you're talking about, vision statements with benefits or talking about pains, you have to be careful about how you're actually making an assumption to a prospect. Because if you do it wrong, it can take them down the entirely wrong train of thought, even if it's good messaging.
Something that, all right, I don't know where to start. On my side. So a couple of things. People are using smiley faces after the thing because they're ashamed of what they said in the previous sentence, right? Nobody likes being bombarded by cold emails, smiley face. Like they're trying to disarm their shame in a way. Or I need the other 4% approval from you. I don't know. I wouldn't have sent them, not saying that you can't send smiley faces because it's unprofessional. I'm just saying that the smiley faces here are they're more for the salesperson than they are for the prospect, as most of this email is. So let's start with the numbered list. Okay, so when you're making an email in one of the sequencers, in whatever software you're using, you might be using SendGrid or MailChimp or something more complex like an Outreach or a SalesLoft or something. You know what I mean? Okay, you're building templates. Some of them have like pure HTML like front end editors, where if you want to do a numbered list, you just click it, and just like in Word, it creates a numbered list. And that is a specific piece of code that says, hey, for every line break, add a numbered list item. That's what this person did. So what happens is when it's sent and the email recipient ingests the email and there are formatting issues, for whatever reason, there were a bunch of breaks so this person sent like 4 other emails. They were all very well formatted. This is how I know they made a mistake with the formatting. And you can go from somebody who is just sending a bad message to looking like you have no clue what you're doing in one email. right? Like this person is marketing inbound sales leads through an inbound lead generation through an outbound sales motion, and then sends this like, I am confident that I do not want you ever to go near any of my prospects ever. So this is a big deal especially if you're selling sales stuff, but you'll look incompetent no matter what if you screw up the formatting this bad. So don't click numbered list. Just type out the numbers. There's only 4 items on this list. I don't know why you can't type out 1, enter, 2, enter, 3, enter, 4, enter. You don't need to click numbered list. Don't do that because you don't know how it's going to appear. Like that's the one thing. Because I'm big on tools. I'm big on understanding why this sort of stuff happens. And this person pushed numbered list. And so my email client said, okay, well, for every line break after this, what do we do? Add a number. And unfortunately, when it got sent, there are 16 line breaks before the code ends in the recipient email, but there's only 4 items. And that's how you get increased volume of B2B leads is number 3 and not number 1. And there'd be 16 other lines in here. It's crazy. So you really want to make sure that you're formatting your emails in your tool in a way that is going to be read well by the recipient, not just so that it's convenient or easy for you to type out as a salesperson. I also don't understand why I kind of want Grayson to talk about the 96% thing. I'll save that for you. I want you to talk about 96%. I'll stop talking here in a second. I want you to address the 96% thing. They also missed the company short code. So it says, I'm confident we can drive serious growth for, period. Guys, come on. Like if you're going to mass spam, at least be good at it. It's just stuff like this where it's like, wow, this is probably the worst way you could break up with somebody. I will make sure to be your absolute enemy from now on. I can't even remember the name of this company, but I can go back in my email and check. It's just stripped from this email, obviously. But like you've done every cardinal sin in one email. You've talked about yourself. You've littered it with assumptions. You've formatted it wrong. You've taken out all the personalization except for cybersecurity, which thank goodness your industry hot word in brackets didn't get taken out or messed up. That would have been one. But that's my take on this email. It's not a really good way to break up. And so the way we'll see later, but the way I structured my an email at this stage is just a resource to be helpful. Oftentimes, so if you're doing outsourced services and people aren't responding, either that person doesn't have the problem, has good success, or wants to do it themselves, right? Or maybe they have another vendor, or wants to do it themselves. And so in my rewrite, I actually focus on giving tools or building credibility with the DIY crowd in the hope that one day they won't want to DIY anymore. But I want to hear Grayson's take on 96%. Grayson, why is this good copywriting? Please tell me. I think it's excellent copywriting. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I mean, so I think this reminds me of an episode that we've done in the past that used a little humor and kind of comedy to break the ice and make it a little bit easier to start a cold conversation. And in my view, I believe that's what they were trying to do here. So when they were saying like, hey, like when they say I'm 96% sure, even people who don't know statistics, well, what do you think? Like that's nearly 100% sure, right? So it's kind of like a little jest of like, I'm basically 100% sure I can. I just need the rest of it by you saying yes. So like, I get the setup. I think I understand what they were trying to do. And we've even praised this strategy, I believe, in a past episode, but I believe it was done in the intro instead of used as kind of like a main pitch for the CTA. I think what went wrong here is honestly, I kind of wanted to back up before we talked about the 96% thing,
Okay,
but this
I'm
actually,
sorry.
this actually falls into the same thing I was going to talk about. But the main reason why it totally falls flat for me is because we talk about formatting, right? And formatting is one thing, but also with formatting, there's the structure and flow of your email and how sentences work together, how one sentence then relates and impacts the next sentence and so on. And if you read this in a very boiled down sense, essentially what this email says is, hey, messaged you a few times, you haven't responded. I'm going to be honest now that I'm confident we can do all these things for you. Well, actually, I'm only 96% sure we can. I need you to say yes for it to actually make me confident. Do you have time to get on a call? Right. So it's like it's
That is
almost like
funny.
if they would have removed the line above talking about truth and confidence, or if they would have removed the 96% bit, it all would have been better or fine. But in this case, it's like they set themselves up to trip over themselves. They said, hey, I want to immediately talk about truth and whether I'm truthful, and then immediately talk about my confidence. And then later in the email, just to make it more ambiguous for you, Mr. Prospect or Mrs. Prospect, I'm going to say 96% sure. I'm going to make you super confused as to what does that mean? How confident is that? How truthful is that? And then, like, where's the prospect left? I think they had this needless kind of game that fell out of what was supposed to be like humor. And because of this lack of structure with how all of the sentences work together, it ended up just really sounding like a desperate breakup email. Well, what you would usually consider or what you'd usually expect from a salesperson when you're on, step 10 or step 11 on a sequence. So that's my take on it. Is I think like it would have been more effective had they not stepped on their own feet earlier in the email. And I think it also would have been a little more effective if it was just used in jest separately at the beginning or end of the email, and not like directly attaching this comedy based on all these assumptions directly to your CTA. I think like that was the big blow up mistake, is because like now, like anybody doesn't get your joke, they're not even gonna like read the rest. They're definitely not gonna respond to you and get on a call. So like don't base whether or not someone says yes or takes an action on your humor or on whether or not someone can get your joke. I think that's very risky.
Another thing before we jump to the rewrite is that when they list what do we do, they don't ever say what they do. And I know that it's like, okay, you don't want to say we do outsourced inbound lead generation. I get that. But looking at this email now, and especially with the color code, you could have written another email that's different from my rewrite, because you could get really specific with what you do. Like, hey, I see that I've tried to bait myself into your paid ads and I don't see any paid ads, or I don't see any organic content strategy that supports your outbound sales motions. Something specific, and go, we have successfully, you could say, we have customers that have done a 3-part video series to support their outbound sales efforts to enlarge their pipeline or something, right? I mean, you could actually give something concrete that you've done, right? When they say, what do we do? That would help me understand a little bit more of the problem you solve. Like telling me that you're going to give me more leads, increase my deal size, help me lower my cost, and make me a thought leader is what everybody tells me they do, right? And so there's a difference between what do we do, and so I'll talk about this in the rewrite, because I tried to change in the rewrite. What people have to understand is what you do has to be packaged inside the context of what the prospect views as their problem. Too often we try to say, hey, here's vague results that we think relate to your persona, when actually it doesn't help us. Sorry, Grayson, you wanted to say something.
Oh, no worries. I was actually going to say I completely agree. That was a point I was going to let go, but I'm glad you brought it up. We've talked about this in past episodes. Ambiguity is enemy in cold prospecting. Like the salesperson needs to have authority and needs to be seen as an experienced person that has gone through these deals before and talked to these people before about these problems before. And so the more ambiguity that builds in an email, the more a prospect who knows what's going on starts to question whether or not you know what's going on. So I think you're totally right. Like, just to touch on it, like every single one of those bullet points is too vague. Like, increase the volume of B2B leads. How? Like, you can do that and have shit quality. Or increase the average value of deals that you close. Yeah, you can do that and close 1 deal a year. Help reduce your cost of new sales. Yeah, if no one sells anything, the cost is 0. And then position you as an authoritative figure. Like, what does that mean, right? The whole idea is like the more ambiguity you have, the more chance you're gonna have someone not understand what you're trying to get across, and you're gonna fail to get a conversion. The more clear you are, the more clarity you can give, or the more specific you can get, then people are gonna really identify, wow, you know what you're talking about, and maybe you actually might be able to help me with my problem or my situation. Yeah, sorry, we were going a little over time on the
Okay,
on the
we can go,
original.
but I think it was a good point to make, because it transitions to a point of like, where I went with my rewrite and probably where I would add to it or change it. So I'll read it now. It says, "Hi, Austin. 69% of B2B salespeople don't have enough leads in their pipeline to meet quota. We've seen outbound teams successfully bolster their pipeline by adding inbound sales motions to their current outbound efforts. We've put together the inbound playbook for outbound sales teams, containing our customers' best plays to generate inbound leads. Would you like to check it out?" So go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say first that this is a fantastic, like, I don't even call it a breakup email. This is a fantastic end of a sequence email, because at this point, I think you should be humble enough to say, okay, I've hit you up 8 times. Maybe you're not in market. So I love this positioning. You do all of the best practices right. You're sharing information right out of the gate that's going to be helpful for them in their job, even if they don't talk to you. You're bringing up pain points for them to consider, bringing up future states for them to consider, and then you leave them with a like no strings attached value offer that lets them remember your brand and keep you in mind for when they do go in market. Like, this is the exact style of emails that I will generally have in my last 2 to 3 steps, because I'm trying to transition them to nurture, because I identify that, hey, they're probably not in market or they're not the right fit now. So I just want to say I love this email.
Nice. Yeah, I think that, and that's what I was talking about a little bit above, and I already kind of mentioned the point that I wanted to make, is that, you know, a lot of times, especially in the context of lead generation or inbound lead generation or outsourced marketing or outsourced demand gen or whatever it is, a lot of companies will have been doing it themselves, or they don't, or they're not, or they're nowhere close to considering outsourcing, right? Like, that's a huge part of that market. I think there's a lot of people who are like, no, I'm going to do it myself, or no, we don't want to pay for someone to do it. But to be able to, and the point I was making is that getting me more leads or getting me more value per deal, right? Bigger deals isn't the problem I have. The problem I have as a sales leader is that, I mean, and this is a global stat for B2B salespeople, but it's a universal enough problem where there's probably someone on my sales team that doesn't have enough leads in the pipeline isn't big enough, right? Now we're talking about a sales leadership problem. How do I get more pipeline? Well, this company has seen outbound teams add to their pipeline by adding some inbound sales motions to outbound efforts. So I've tried to allude that, hey, you can actually do this with all of your same people, with all the same stack. Here's a collection of plays you can run with what you're doing right now. Do you want to check it out? Because I think that it's also aimed at the type of person who doesn't have the problems of outsourcing, right? If somebody wants to outsource, they're running out of time, or they don't have the expertise on their team. You know, there's different problems that someone who knows that they want to outsource something already has, right? They've gone through that part of the buyer's journey. Whereas at this point, if you haven't received a response this late in the sequence, they're probably not there. So you have to take your content and move it up the funnel and go, okay, what would a DIY person find useful? And what could I give somebody what could be useful to someone who wants to remain status quo? And because they're already on the way out, they obviously aren't in market. So how can you leave on a good note with that in the sequence is my thought.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's so much that you can do with this sort of play as well, like from a bigger picture standpoint, right? Like, everyone wants to remarket to outbound leads if they don't respond, especially if they identify or guess that they're qualified. So if you do something like this, you already have a high value list of people who, like, maybe they didn't respond positively, but out of the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 leads that just went completely cold, you'll have 5-10% that click through on this guide or maybe respond and say sure. And then all of a sudden, when you do need to maybe remarket or try to re-engage with that audience, like, you know where to start. It's the potential trigger for sellers. And then I think on the same time, I do this all the time too in the ends of my emails. I test what my marketing team is doing to figure out what's important on the sales side. Because, like, at this point, right, like the chance that someone is going to actually respond with interest and be in market at this point is relatively low. So I might as well get whatever value I can out of a conversation that I could generate with them. So one thing that I would do here is, at the end of this email, I would have two very different, very specific sets of collateral. I would A/B test them so that I could say, cool, like what is the actual topic these types of people are thinking about when they're not in market, or like what is the thing that they're willing to click through on or start a conversation on, even when they're not willing to have a sales conversation. That's all important data that you can not only extract, but you can set up as A/B tests to help salespeople and help the marketing team and give them some intel on how out of market or top of funnel prospects actually interact with content and messaging.
That's a good point. I like that. I like that move where you A/B test the content and see which one gets better response out of people. We actually have I only say that just because we've recently looked at some of the stats around our content, and the one that gets 75% of the downloads is responsible for almost no pipeline. Whereas like some content that gets like almost no downloads, it was responsible for almost all the pipeline. So it's interesting that like, and like you say, that's part of marketing. This is a little bit outside of sales. But it's important to acknowledge as a part of an outbound motion that most of the people that download the content or want to opt in for the content aren't going to be part of pipeline, right? But they might become pipeline later. So that's kind of the point. And if you're not setting yourself up for success or positioning yourself, then they're just going to go buy from a competitor when they're in market anyway. So you've already put in the effort to get in front of these people, and hopefully you've written emails that don't offend them, and you've actually done some good for your brand or for your company. And so now you can leave off on the right foot and come back to them later when perhaps things have changed, and help them when they're in market instead of out of market.
Awesome. Well, it looks like
we can end a little early.
Yeah, we can actually end a little early for once. This was a really awesome rewrite, Austin. I like the email that you pulled up. I think it was definitely a little dirty. There were some just small, silly mistakes that were there, but there were also some structural things that I think we identified that can help improve just the original version.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's I mean, you could, like you said, I mean, there's definitely some things in here you could pull out and make work, and that we've actually seen work in other emails. But again, like, it all matters when it's interesting that when you look at copywriting, everything matters. You know, how the whole email goes together, how it flows. Like, you can, if you putting something out of order, putting something in the wrong place, or putting something in that doesn't need to be there, can make or break the entire email. So you look at this and it's an eyesore. But formatting aside, like if I took away all of these, this was formatted exactly as I received it, by the way. You know, you take away all these silly formatting problems, and it's not too long of an email. It's just not well structured. There isn't a good idea. There's no momentum going. It's a Hail Mary grab for that. And so, I mean, I think there's so many better things we could be doing. Nobody wants to hear about what awards you've won, especially Growth 500. Who knows? Who even know? Unless it's something that's freaking amazing. And guess what? Leave that for when they investigate it themselves. If you have to tell someone you received an award, it's probably not that important of an award. You know, like, nobody asks people, hey, did you? No one goes out and says, hey, I got an Oscar. Everyone finds out that they got an Oscar or a Grammy or whatever. I'm not a big award, or a PGA Tour championship or an NBA Finals championship. Nobody has to go out there and say, hey, did you know that I won the NBA Finals? They go look up and find out that they won the NBA Finals. That's an award. If you're telling people you won an award, it's probably not that good of an award. Just saying.
I love it. I love it. For any salespeople out there trying to hit up Austin, he's very picky about what awards you bring to him.
Yes.
I love it. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks everyone for joining us today. Sorry we've been off and on with episodes as holidays and other events have been coming up. So we'll be back to a more consistent schedule in about 30 days once I move over to the Western Hemisphere. So thank you all for keeping up with us, and join us next Monday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time for another episode. And please, like, send us your emails. We'd love to check them out and do a review. We keep everything anonymous. And if you don't want to do your own, bring one up to us and let's do it live on the show together. We'd love to have you.
See ya.